Hello, everyone. It's Grace B once again on Cancer Convos with Grace B. Thank you ever so much for joining us on our monthly shows. And we're so glad and appreciative of your wonderful support as always. Now, let's get right straight into the topic. This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and what better way to close it than to have a conversation with a fellow advocate who is doing wonders in the cancer space? I'll be introducing her to you shortly. And I'm sure that you'll be able to benefit from a few wisdom nuggets that you'll be able to put across to us. I know I will. So, without much ado, let me welcome Roberta Albany to our show. Enjoy. Good morning, Roberta. So wonderful to see you. Thank you for coming. How are you today?
I'm good. Good morning to you, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. So we'll, dive straight into the questions because as everyone knows, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And, I thought it would be wonderful to spotlight you, especially all that you're doing in the breast cancer space. We're both, fellow advocates, breast
Yes.
cancer survivors, and we do understand what it takes, to be in this space. So let's start with the very question that I ask everyone that comes to the show. How did you get your diagnosis? And when you got it, what was your reaction?
How I got my diagnosis? Well, it's because I did my own self exams. So I was training for my first half marathon with Black Girls Run, and I noticed that my breasts were bothering me quite a bit. So, I was lifting weights, I was doing all the things to train for the half marathon. And for whatever reason, I stopped lifting the weights, I stopped doing as much, but my breasts continued to hurt. So this particular month, I went on and I did my self examination of my breasts and found the lump. And I said, that lump was not there in April, which I had my clean mammogram April 2013. So I made an appointment with my GYN doctor. So in November 2013, this particular time, she did a mammogram and an ultrasound. So I had both tests completed. And when the nurse came back, she wanted to know how did I know to check up under my underarm. And I just looked at her like she was crazy and told her I paid attention. And I've been doing self exams since I was in my early 20s because I had issues and I had a partial hysterectomy at age 30. And I understood to continue to do self examinations along with mammograms that I was getting at age 30. So she said the mammogram didn't pick up the lump, but the ultrasound did. And before, yes. So, and before you know it, in December, had an appointment with the breast surgeon. So I went December 17th and December 19th. He called me while I was at work, unfortunately, and said that, unfortunately, Miss Albany, you have breast cancer.
Oh,
So to hear that in December of 2013, after being told I had a clean mammogram in April 2013, I will say it was a whirlwind. Sometimes I say other stuff, but I'm going
yeah.
to keep it clean. It was truly a whirlwind, and I think I was more upset trying to figure out how is that possible. I didn't even make it to April 2014 for
Mm,
my yearly, and what was discovered, which I already knew that I had very, very dense breasts. I knew that since my early 20s. But what they forgot to tell me that when I would do my mammograms, I should have been getting an MRI and or an ultrasound because my breasts were so very dense. And at that time, they were using the 2D machines.
mm,
Okay. So in 2013, where I was going, they hadn't upgraded their machines. Here's the problem. So that's a big problem. So the truth of the matter, had I not did my own self exam after uh, you know the pain that kept persisting, we may not be having this conversation.
God forbid.
Mhm.
So your diagnosis, you had pains before, right?
Yes, yes, and it's funny because some doctors. That's how I changed my original primary physician because
Hmm.
she told me that cancer, you don't get pain from cancer or something to that effect. And I looked at her like that to me just didn't make good sense. I was like, okay, whatever. Um, Went and got another primary, fired her, got another primary physician, and basically I felt sorry for him because I just dumped a whole crap load of stuff onto him.
Hmm.
But what I will say is we learned together. We were educating each other. And I think that's a beautiful thing because you hear about the disparities and things of that nature with regards to, Black women. So, and I
Mhm.
think that was the other thing. That's how I got into advocacy, knowing that how my team treated me. You
Yes.
know, I fired people along the way. Let me be very clear about that.
I
But,
want you to hang on to that because I don't want you to gloss over it. I want us to really discuss that disparity section and the gaps that you found when you were going through your treatment. Let me go
well,
back to the pain section. It's strange you should say that because I didn't have any pains.
oh,
And I
wow.
was diagnosed with a stage three, borderline stage four. I didn't have any pains. You know what
Mhm.
saved me, Roberta? I fell in my bathroom and that was it.
Are
I
you
wouldn't have
serious?
known that I had breast cancer. But that's a story for another day. Uh,
Right, right. Oh, wow.
today is your story.
Right.
So I just wanted to bring that up so that anybody that is listening will know that you don't have to have pains to be diagnosed with breast cancer. So don't
Well,
think that has to stop you from going for your checkup or checking yourself even like you did, like you were wise to do.
yeah. Well, you know what? Not just you don't have to have pain, but also breast cancer don't always appear in lumps. It
Mm-hmm.
just so happened I had a lump. So, but not only that, so not only that part, but I also I knew what my breasts look like, and that's important. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what their body actually look like because they really not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to feel, but I think it's more important to know exactly what they look like. So if something looks not normal, then you can go to your doctors and say, hey, this wasn't here before and this is
Mm-hmm.
what's happening. Things of that nature, like rashes, or if your nipple is inverted, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it makes a difference. It's just so for me, because of the problems that I was having in my early 20s,
Hmm.
I just that was just pretty much something I did. you know
Absolutely. And, those were wise decisions. Things have to happen to us before we actually take charge of ourselves, of our health.
yeah,
Oh,
that is
God
that is
bless you.
true. Thank
So,
you.
because I saw that I didn't want you to gloss over that. What were the biggest challenges that you faced as regards disparities and all?
Well, for me, the biggest challenge was uh not getting the resources that others were getting. And how I found that out is because, when you're told about breast cancer, they tell you to go to support groups and things of that nature. And I took advantage of that. And also, I took advantage of all the other events that the Cancer Center was having.
Mm.
So, this particular time, I went to the support group, and unfortunately, I was the only Black female, imagine. And
Wow.
and it was majority, like I said, I was the only Black woman, and the rest were white women. Some were young, but most of them were much older than me, right? And I'm sitting there listening to them talk about all these different resources, like Hope Lodge with the American Cancer Society
Mhm.
in Pennsylvania. This other program called Unite for Her, and it was just a whole bunch, but those two stood out for me: Hope Lodge and Unite for Her. So I asked them, "Where are you guys getting this information from?" And they said, "Oh, my medical team. Shouldn't you go to this cancer center?" Right? I said, "Yes." "Well, your medical team should be giving you this information." And I said, "Huh?" Just like that. Huh? Interesting. So when it was time to go back for my chemo, I just point blank, no sugar coating, and just asked, do you all pick and choose who you give resources to,
Mhm.
and or pick and choose who you give the resources to, and also the events that take place here and this, at the cancer center or anywhere else for that matter? And when I asked that question, you can pretty much tell they were shook.
Yes.
And they were like, well, why were you asked that? I'm like, I live 50 miles away from the cancer center. Hope Lodge would be a blessing for me.
Mhm.
Unite for Her. Before I was diagnosed, I was into physical activities, exercise. And so I did all the things that you all say to do so you don't get sick, right?
Mhm.
So why wouldn't that not be offered to me? So, of course, it was the back and forth. I think it was more so everyone blaming each other. But what was truly a big OMG or haha moment is when the particular social workers, and I'll put the S on the
Mhm.
end, was on vacation, and I was telling my oncologist that I'm still financially strapped. I won't be able to get my chemo because I was in the process of I had to retire.
Hmm.
So I'm waiting for my medical and all those things to kick in.
Hmm.
And I said, I haven't heard from anyone, this, that, and the other. And she looked at me and said, "You haven't heard anything?" Now, mind you, I'm like almost 2 or 3 months into my chemo session.
Chemo.
hmm So, with that being said, I happened to come out of the exam room and witness with my own eyes and ears my oncologist having words with the particular social worker about me not receiving what I needed to have.
Hmm.
And that person went on to say that she put my paperwork at the bottom of the pile. She was on vacation for over 2 weeks. So basically, you let me know, girlfriend, I wasn't important. And I wasn't important because the color of my skin. You didn't have to say it, is what you said.
Yes.
But the beautiful thing about it, my oncologist didn't see, well, she know she saw my skin color. But what I'm saying is that she fought for me because I was her patient. Whether I was black or white, I was her patient.
Yes.
And that angered her to hear someone, her coworker, whatever you want to call it, tell her that she put her patient paperwork at the bottom of the pile because basically I wasn't important.
Basically, because you were not important.
Yes.
That's it.
So when that happened, and I realized, oh, so let me just tell you this: before the nurse can get the chemo into my port, she was out there with the paperwork,
She was what?
and she was out there in the chemo infusion room with the paperwork. And I will tell you that day or the next day, I was approved for everything.
Bless.
Yeah. So with that being said, it was interesting that here it is. I have access, right, to insurance, transportation, things of that nature. And yet I still had to deal with, not getting the resources and, and basically struggle for, like I said, 2 to 3 months before
Hmm.
my insurance kicked in.
Hmm.
So that told me, what about the women
Or who
who
don't
don't
have a voice and are not forward in putting their concerns across, you know?
exactly, exactly. So that is how I got into advocacy work because if like I said, if I'm having these issues, which was mind blowing to me, what about anyone else that
Hmm.
look like me,
Hmm.
or other marginalized communities? So
Hmm.
that is how I got into this
Awesome. I
advocacy.
mean, it's a crazy experience, but I'm so happy that you have used that experience to carve your niche in speaking out, against these issues that so many of us encounter day by day, not just in the
Exactly.
cancer space, but the overall healthcare space. It's sad that this happens to this day. And that was
It
a
is that.
social worker, right? That was a social worker, you
That
know.
was, yeah, that part right there. And needless to say, I didn't have any more dealings with that person. I dealt with other people,
Hmm.
because if you do not have enough respect for me, I don't need you as
Yeah.
part of my medical team. I could find other social workers, other therapists to get the things that I need. So, and that's what I did. If you were disrespectful or you
Hmm.
didn't think I was important enough, I would just call a thing a thing. I would just say it what it is.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll be nice to say biases, or sometimes I'll just say, okay, racism, and you can't be a part of my team.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
have fired plenty of people.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's the thing people need to understand,
Need
especially
and
marginal.
need to know that they have the right to do so because so
Exactly.
many of them are so scared to,
To do so.
make those
Yes.
changes,
Yes. Yes.
not rock the
It's
boat.
right. It's about your life. You want to be here, right? So you do what you have to do. But again, I understand those who may not feel comfortable. And that
Yes.
is why I do what I do, helping newly diagnosed
Yes.
women go through this and let them know that they're not alone.
Yes. So, do you often deal with, your experience is about 15 years now or 14 years now? Um, do you often experience the fear of recurrence? Because I do. Sometimes it's at the back of my head that, oh, okay, if I feel a pain here or there, there could be something. How do you, if you do, how do you manage that fear?
Unfortunately,
Because
the
everybody
reality,
does.
right. Well, here's the thing. For me, the reality for me, yes, okay, I was diagnosed stage 2, but the reality is that early stages, 30% or 40% of us may go on to become metastatic. So I'm realistic about that. How I deal with the fear is, I just put one foot forward and just do what I have to do and not dwell on it as much because I understand, I get it. I'm educated enough to understand that it can happen. But at the same time, that's why I go to the different conferences, make sure I'm in, work with organizations that deal with clinical trials so I know what's the latest and the greatest. God forbid, if that happened, I have a backup plan to do what I
Yes.
need to do.
Hmm.
And again, a lot of us don't have that. So that's why I use my voice to put it out there. More importantly, to make sure that women and men, but people in our communities know that if you're diagnosed, ask about clinical trials. Don't sit there and wait for them to ask because we know
Hmm.
they're not going to ask because of the biases, because they're going to just think you're not going to do it anyway. And a lot of times, we found out that most of us would participate in a clinical trial, but we're never asked. Now, I happen to gotten lucky that my radiologist was the one that asked me to participate in a clinical trial, and I did with him with regards to watching early stage women for 10 plus years to see if radiation is beneficial to early stagers. And obviously, knock on wood, it did what it was supposed to do. So I'm
Yes.
12 years, yeah, I'm 12 years out from my diagnosis. But again, I'm real about it and I understand. So I just, I pray about it. I
Hmm.
definitely have my faith,
Hmm.
but I just try not to let it overwhelm me. And if I feel a pain or something's not right, I just go and have it checked out just to, dot all my I's and cross all my T's. And it's interesting that you say that because just before I left to go to Chicago, I had to get a CT scan because I was having some issues and everything came back normal. So it's just
Praise
it's,
God. Mm.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Right. So a lot of it has to do with my other medical issues. That's was the driving point. So you
Yes,
just, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
That is
you just
so
have to be proactive.
important.
Yeah, I think you just
Yeah.
have to be proactive rather reactive,
Hmm.
and then just have the tools necessary. God forbid if it comes back, and that's how I go about it every day.
Yes, exactly. So what would you say to, men and women like us that are not that conversant about clinical trials, research, everything? How would you speak to them to, look out for themselves and find the information that may be required, you know? That is one part of my question. The second part is, what would you say to those um, oncologists or researchers about getting the word out that such clinical trials exist? Because, mark you, even our own doctors do not even know that certain clinical trials exist. We, the patients, have to go asking these questions. What would you say to them? First, to the, patients, and secondly, to those people that have the resources, but the information is not getting to us.
Well, to the patients, especially to those who are newly diagnosed, I just really just try to give them all the resources that I benefited from and know that others have benefited from. I just give that to them upfront. I don't gatekeep. I give them all these resources. I tell them about clinical trials that's available. I put them towards the what is that, the .gov, and I let them know that it's not easy to navigate, and then there are other organizations that can help you out. But more importantly, I always tell them, ask your doctor about a clinical trial. And if they do not know about one, do they know about another clinical trial at another location? Because it's not at all locations.
Hmm.
To that point, when I say that the education is definitely should be both ways, you and the medical team, I just went to I went to my rheumatologist and we were having a conversation and I said something about I said it to him and my oncologist about this test called Cancer Guard. And my rheumatologist, he was like, "What's that?" I said, "Well, it's like a biomarker that, from what I'm gathering, because I'm learning myself, and I just heard about it, sitting there watching TV, and the commercial came on, and I said, hmm. So I said, the pharmaceutical company is Exact Sciences. So how do you guys have this, that, and the other? He said no, and I showed him because I looked it up on the website. I showed it to him to this because we were just talking about my blood work. And
Mm-hmm.
I said, I think that's something I might be interested in doing. And I asked my oncologist, and I also asked him that that's something I might be wanting to do. And do you guys offer that service?
Mm-hmm.
Neither one of them knew about it because I'm the one telling them because I'm always looking for, like I said, the best and the greatest and the latest. But this particular commercial came on, and it caught my eye, and I said, "Oh, this is interesting." So we as the advocates, a lot of times we're educating the medical community because sometimes they are not up on the latest and the greatest. And to me, I think that's unfortunate. And the ones that are up on the latest and the greatest, it depends on their institution. If they're at the more um, well-known institution,
Mm-hmm.
they're the ones that have all the clinical trials and things of that nature. But not all of us can go to those academic institutions, right? So some
Yes.
of us go into our community health clinics or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it to me is mind blowing. So with that being said, so I said to both my oncologist and a rheumatologist, I said I'm sure Exact Science will be at San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. I will be there and I will ask more questions, get more information, and I
Mm-hmm.
think people should know about that.
And share. Yes.
Exactly, exactly,
That's wonderful. You're doing so much, in advocating and sharing the information that, you're learning about too. And that's so important. Sharing is caring, as we always say, and those
exactly.
pieces of information actually mean the world to anybody that can come across it. It's so important. Um, Something that I always ask my guests is, you know, how did your diagnosis, kind of affect family ties, you know, spouse, significant other, children? How were you able to keep them? Because there's one thing us as patients, right? But we have our
Mhm.
caregivers too who are equally as, what should I say, worried, stressed, anxious about our diagnosis. How were you able to, or how were they able to um, kind of act or kind of, lower the tempo when this diagnosis came about?
Uh, well, you know what? I think because I had my aunt who was um anything I wanted, she was there to make sure it was good for me.
Your aunt,
So
right?
yeah, my aunt, yes.
Mhm.
And she was my caregiver. And I stressed to her that I didn't want to put this burden on my son
Mhm.
because at the time he lived in another state and in a relationship and things of that nature, so I didn't want to put that burden on him
Yes.
or my partner. So the goal was she and I handle it together, and we kept them informed. So my support system, they all were there.
Hmm.
So with my aunt and my girlfriend Ashley, who I say is my best friend forever,
Mm.
and I met her through Black Girls Run.
Oh,
Um,
bless.
yes, and she did not walk away from me when I got diagnosed. She stayed. A lot of people left. She
Yeah,
was
you can say
yeah,
that again.
yeah, she stayed. My other girlfriend, God rest her soul, Reese, she stayed. Sister Joan, she stayed. I can name the names who stayed. And so they were my biggest support system, and they understood that I didn't want this on my son. He was just getting his career started, and
Hmm.
I wanted him to focus on that.
Yeah.
And they held me down. They held me down. So um, especially my aunt. Oh my goodness, God rest her soul. But that was a hurt piece because she ended up being diagnosed with cancer, and I tried to be her caregiver, but the results
Oh
wasn't
dear.
Yeah, it
I'm so
wasn't
sorry.
the outcome wasn't the same, and no one prepares you for that. When your caregiver took care of you, and then you become their
Hmm.
caregiver, and the results, yeah. So,
Yeah,
um, so with
that
that being,
hurts. That
it
hurts.
it definitely hurts. So, with that, yeah. So my girlfriend Ashley, she was very intentional of making sure that we would meet up every
Hmm.
month for the last 12 years. That is what we have done.
Oh,
Intention. Yeah. So we would make sure we have our girl time. So it was easy for me to not throw it all on, you know,
yes.
my son and my significant other because there was Aunt Rita, there was Ashley, there was Reese, there was Sister Jones. So I had people praying for me, and then I had those who, like I said, ghosted me. And now
Hmm.
that as they think I'm better, and I'm like, no, I'm just not in treatment anymore. But the reality,
Yes.
but I was like, but the reality is cancer is cancer. It has a mind of its own. So my
Yes.
so my thing was this, that energy you had when I was diagnosed. I need you to keep that same energy. I don't need you.
Hmm.
I don't need you back. I'm good.
Yeah. Wonderful. You're so blessed, to have those great friends, really, because we all need those kind of people in our corner, whether we're undergoing treatment or we're as survivors, because, we find out that at the end of the day, we have those nasty side effects. I have nasty side effects from chemo.
Yes. Yes.
Unbelievable. When people see you, they think, oh, is she smiling and everything? They don't know what
Mhm.
you're dealing with. But
Exactly.
we thank God for being able to manage these side effects. So, one last question I wanted to ask is for anyone that is undergoing a treatment or has received a cancer diagnosis now, what would you tell them? What would you say to them?
To be honest with you, give yourself grace. Honestly, give yourself grace. Um, if you have to have those moments where you need to have a pity party, have your pity party, but do not stay there long. And I
Mm,
mean that. Do not stay there long. But the honest to goodness is honestly give yourself grace because you're going to need it. Um, give yourself grace. Surround yourself with people who truly care and love you and want to be there for you and want to make sure you get through this. Even after you get through, because like you said, the nasty side effects, um, people don't understand. I like to call, a lot of our issues is those invisible side
hmm.
effects, right? Or the
Invisible,
invisible
really. Hmm.
or the invisible disability. Just
Yes.
because I look a certain way, you don't know what I'm going through
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
why I might need to park in a handicap um,
Hmm.
place parking. So it's really about giving yourself grace. Get rid of the toxic people. Um,
So
and just
important that. So
yeah,
important.
yeah. So it's really just surround yourself with people who want the best for you.
Hmm.
And again, keep the faith and give yourself grace. That's basically that's the
Yes.
most I can share with people because it's a lot. It's
And
a lot.
keep the faith.
Right. And especially for our sisters and brothers who are metastatic.
Mm.
So I think about them often all the time. And my advocacy was focused on metastatic because when I was diagnosed, the person who helped me through, she was Sarita, God rest her soul. She was originally diagnosed stage 1, I believe. And when I was diagnosed, her cancer came back
Oh my
stage 4,
goodness.
stage 4 metastatic. And with that, I always tell people I looked at her as my big sister, my mentor, all the things because she was having the same issues to being the only black person, the only young black person, and that's the other thing that bothers me. 12 years ago, we were saying that young women were being diagnosed. 12 years later, we're still talking about the same thing. And now it's worse.
It's worse. Mm.
It's worse. And not only it's worse, but the numbers for black women, that hasn't changed. 40% of us still dying. So
Yes.
my thing is make that make sense, people.
Yes. Even with all the advances, going on, why is that? You know,
Exactly.
so
Well,
researchers are not spread out to accommodate our type. It's just now that, people like us who are in research are
yes.
asking questions and saying, hey, there are Caucasians here, there are women here. Where are the
Mhm.
blacks and where are the men? You understand? Fill in the
Exactly.
gaps.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly.
why, yeah,
Well, well, that's why I do what I do. So with
yes.
that being said, and I think it's something that Sarita said to me that really stuck out. That she said she wish she knew when she was diagnosed with stage 4 metastatic. She wished she had known that when she was originally diagnosed stage
Mm-hmm.
1. She would
Mm-hmm.
have did things a lot differently. And
Exactly.
that stuck with me. And I said, okay. So I learned not just about my subtype, but all subtypes of breast cancer, and not just breast cancer, but other cancers too.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I realized going to different conferences and things of that nature, marginalized communities and unfortunately, especially Black communities, we're dying
Yes,
across the cancer continuum, and that to me is mind blowing.
it is mind blowing.
So at the end of the day, a lot of it is structural racism and biases. So
And
you know,
systemic. It's systemic, really.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
it's
exactly.
systemic. Like I always say, all cancers matter. I'm a breast
It
cancer
does.
survivor, but when you sit in that infusion room, you're surrounded with other types of cancers, patients.
Exactly,
So
exactly,
advocacy has to cover all of them.
exactly. So
Thank you
with
so
that,
much, Roberta. It's been so wonderful to have you on the show. We have to do this again, but I just thought
definitely,
I have to bring you, to round up Breast Cancer Awareness Month and highlight what you do and your experience as well. You'll be coming back on very soon. Thank you so
I
much.
will. Thank you. Thank you for
God
having
bless
me.
you and
God
see you
bless you too.
again. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to us, listen about her breast cancer experience and how she's been able to pay her experience forward, her impact in breast cancer advocacy, how she's able to utilize those experiences to, kind of encourage those who are facing a cancer diagnosis for the first time, and also to be able to tell us exactly what it is to be denied coverage at the first time, having the support of her, oncologist to make sure that she got the support that she needed. So please take time to watch again at your own convenience and listen to those wisdom nuggets that I know will change your minds and make sure that you're able to advocate for yourselves at all times. And so, before I close, let me ask you guys to please like, subscribe, and share our channel. Bye bye now.